What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel for a brand new video. In today's video, we are continuing my series of playing Armchair GM for hopefully all 12 CDL teams as we approach the offseason. It probably will not be possible, unfortunately, because Roster Mania is going to kick off on September 5th. I probably won't have time to do this for all 12 teams before then, but I would do it for as many teams as possible, and I'm just going to start with the teams who I find the most interesting. And today we're going to be talking about the Florida Mutineers because they have an interesting offseason ahead of them after a kind of disappointing 2021 season. I think it's definitely fair to say that they did not meet their expectations they had coming into the season. So, if you enjoyed this video, definitely leave a like down below. Leave a comment as well with your thoughts on the video and how you think Florida should go about making their roster this offseason. And also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one from me in the coming 2 weeks, because there definitely will be more of them. I'm going to do LA Thieves, going to do Seattle Surge, and whoever else I have time for. So definitely subscribe. Come back for more if you enjoy it. Follow me on Twitter. That link will be down below. I talk about a lot about Roster Mania over there as well. So if you like the conversation, join me over there. All that said, let's hop right in. Okay, so before we get into what I would do with Florida for 2022, we have to start with what happened in 2021. I did the same thing when I talked about the Lone Royal Ravens and their offseason. You can find a link to that video down below in the description as well. For Florida this year, it was okay. It wasn't great. It definitely did not meet their preseason expectations. They were pretty much consensus a top 4 or 5 team coming into the season, and it didn't work out. They got 8th overall in Call of Duty points for the year. Their match record was 17-20. That was 7th best in the league. Their map record was 70-73, also 7th best in the league. They were pretty good, actually, at hardpoint and search. They were above 500 in both of those modes, but they really were not the best at control, and that sort of held them back a lot this year. Like, you see that map record, they were barely below 500 in their map record. You would think their match record probably would have been higher than 7th, because winning about half of your maps, that's pretty good, because, like, there's only probably, maybe 4 or 5 teams who did more than that this year, so you thought they would have been a little bit better, given that they were almost positive across the season, but that control record really dragged them down, and overall they just could not find consistency. They would win, they'd go on a big hardpoint streak, they won like 6 hardpoints in a row at one point, and then they just couldn't win anything. Same with search, they'd have their ups, they'd have their downs. That was really the story of their season, as we're going to get to in a minute. But overall, when you look at the numbers on paper, again, they were not terrible for Florida this year. They were right in the middle of the pack for most of these statistics. However, given their high expectations entering the season, I think it's safe to say that these numbers were a disappointment for them this year. And like I was just saying, the ups and downs and the inconsistencies were really the story of Florida this year. That was just a roller coaster ride of a season for them. I think the word inconsistent was used to describe this team, like on Reddit and Twitter, just so many times this year, because really it's the truth. You see their record up there versus bottom 4 teams this year, so teams that did not make champs essentially. Florida had a 10-5 match record against them, and then versus the rest of the top 8 teams, so the other 7 teams who did make champs, they were 7-15. So they just looked really good against the bottom teams, and you would think, all right, this team, like, they're finally putting it together. They're finally going to come out there. They're going to show their potential. They're going to beat these top teams, but they just could never do it consistently. They won less than a third of their matches against top teams. That's not going to cut it, and we all know that. And it was just so frustrating because you would see them dominate the bottom teams, and it's like, why can't you do that against the top teams? Like, some of those top teams, yeah, they were good, but they weren't just out of this world unbeatable. If Florida was playing like the way they played against the bottom teams, they could have beaten a lot of those top teams, but for some reason, they just could not ever figure it out against the good teams. And also, I think the way that their season ended really describes how their whole season went. So they started stage 5 3-0, if you can remember that. I think they beat Ultra, or they beat either Ultra or Dallas. You know, you thought things were really trending up for this team. And then they went into the week 3 of the stage 5. They had to win one of their 2 series in order to clinch a winners bracket spot for the stage 5 major. They lost both of them. They only won 1 map in those 2 series, and they started the major in the losers bracket. So they went from potential 1 seed to losers bracket in the span of 1 week. And then they also went on, they lost their first match at the Stage 5 Major, and they lost their first match at Champs as well. So after the 3-0 start to Stage 5, they lost 4 straight series to end their season. That just describes them. That's how they were this year. They could not put anything together consistently. They would win a couple, then they'd lose a bunch. And especially when it came to those top teams, they just could not beat them. So overall, definitely a disappointing season for Florida. They could just never quite tap into the potential we all saw that they had. All right, so I think that describes Florida's inconsistencies pretty well for the 2021 season, and now it is time to start building their roster for next season. And it starts with 2 guys from their current team. I think, without a doubt, this team should be keeping Skies and Neptune. Again, this is from my perspective, if I was in charge and if my goal was to win at any cost. It's not, to build a content or to build a following or whatever else. It's just to win. So I liked what I saw a lot from Skies and Neptunes this year, and I would keep them for next year. For Skies, he was, not performing the best to start the year. and then at one point he just turned it around. Like, he went from kind of overrated, maybe like in stage 1 and stage 2, to all of a sudden being very underrated as we approach the end of the season. He got a lot better. His numbers were good across the board. Again, these are just KD numbers. There are more stats than KD. I know that. They're just the easiest to show on screen and the easiest to understand. So he was a 1.09 overall KD for the year. That was definitely towards the top. I'm pretty sure it was in the top 8 or 10. Hardpoint KD was also towards the top. Might have even been first. A 1.15. Very good hardpoint KD. 1.0 in search, and then positive in control as well. So overall for Skies, he was just good on the AR this year. I think over the course of the year, he was probably a top 3 or 4 main AR for the season. He shoots very straight. We all know that. He's a good player, a smart player, fundamentally sound player. All of that. Skies does it well. He's a main AR that I would have no problem building around for next year if I was in charge of Florida. And then for Neptune, his numbers are actually like better than I even expected with him. Like, he had a 1.01 overall. He was positive in 2 of the 3 modes. Only control he was not positive, and we know that was their worst mode of the season. So maybe he was part of the reason for it. Maybe his teammates dragged him down a little bit in that mode. But regardless, for Neptune, it goes beyond the stats. Like, I was expecting him when I looked up his stats for them to be bad, but I was more focused on this guy's skill and his potential, because when you watch this guy play, you can clearly see that he is a very talented player and he will get a lot better as he continues learning this game. You have to remember, this is the first game that he competed in Call of Duty. He was a Halo player before this, so there's a lot that he can learn and he can keep improving upon. Like, search and destroy, I think that always sort of comes easier for the Halo guys, it seems, but the respawns not so much. But he was still pretty good in respawns this year. There were times where you could see him just take over a game. His movement skills are very good. I think he fits perfectly in like that sort of roaming, flanking, or whatever you want to call it, just the roaming SMG Slayer role. He fits that role very well. He can kill people very well. He shoots very straight. He moves around the map very well. He can get himself out of bad situations if he finds himself in them. So he's skilled. He had the good numbers to back it up, but beyond that, I think as he keeps learning the game, he will keep getting better, and it will make Florida better, because these two guys to build around, I think they're the perfect 2 pieces, and then let's add some teammates for them. So first, we're going to find an SMG duo for Neptune, and I'm not looking very far. If I am in charge of the Florida Mutineers, I am looking at Yeez. Now, he ended the year on Florida's bench as a substitute player. I do not know the details of his contract. Most contracts were 1+1, so that would mean he was signed to this year, and then the team option would be for next year. They could bring him back if they wanted to, but since he was signed midseason, that might not be the case, and he might not be around next year. I'm not sure, but even if he's not around, or if he's not under contract for them next year, he should be, because he's a very good prospect. I made a video just the other day about the top North American Challengers prospects, and he was #1 for me. He just has so much potential. I think he could definitely replace Havoc for this team very easily, because when you think of Havoc, what do you think about? Search and destroy, and that really has been used as strong mode the entire Challenger season. He's been a very good search and destroy player, so Havoc, you know, he did not do much for this team in the respawns. I guess you could say he was their playmaker, but he definitely was not a slayer in respawns, and Yeez can do that. He can be a playmaker and a slayer as well in the respawns on top of his very good S&D performances, and I just think with him, he has very high upside. Same with Neptune. So this is a duo that you're going to be taking a chance on for sure, because they have 1 combined year of CDL experience between the 2 of them. So obviously not much experience, but clearly a lot of potential and a lot of skill that can move this team forward towards their future in a very strong direction. You can pair these guys together. Yeez can sort of be your aggressive SMG player who gets in the face of your opponents and puts a lot of pressure on them, and then Neptune can be the guy roaming around just sort of doing his own thing, making plays and slaying out, because he can do that very well, as we saw throughout this entire year. So it would be risky, but there is familiarity there too. Florida already had Yeez under contract to end the season, so they were at least confident enough in him where if something went wrong with Neptune or Havoc this year, they would have felt comfortable sliding him in there to end the season. So he has that going for him. He's familiar with the organization. They're familiar with him. They like him enough to bring him on as a sub. I think he's definitely worthy of a roster spot. Another guy people have mentioned is Hook, but I'm not sure how him and Neptune fit with each other. I think both of them sort of fit in that SMG roaming slayer role. So I don't know how they would pair together, but Florida was interested in Hugh earlier in the year when he was dropped by Dallas or LA Thieves, whichever time he was benched. So there was interest there before. There might be interest there again, but I think Yeez is a better fit, and also he just has so much upside and it really helped them build towards their future. Last but not least, we have to find an AR to pair alongside Skies. I am getting Awakening out of there in that flex role. I think him and Skies did not work the best together in 4v4. They were good together in 5v5, but their teamwork and their chemistry just didn't seem to be there this year. So I'm looking elsewhere, and I'm looking at Big P. Gunless had a very good year for the Seattle Surge in 2020. I think there's not many players who ended the season that they were underrated. Most people are properly rated by the end of the year. However, I think Pierce was definitely underrated this year for the Seattle Surge. He made a lot of big plays for them. When they were popping off, a lot of the times he was the one that was causing it. You know, Octane played well, but Gunless definitely did too. And another thing with Florida is it seems like they really, really need a leader. That was sort of their thing. A lot of the pros were saying this year from the outside looking in, guys like Zed, Parasite, whoever else, they were saying this team does not have a leader, and it kind of showed in their listens in sometimes too. I guess you would say their leader was Havoc, so that's another reason why you would have to bring Gunless in this situation, because of course Havoc would not be on the roster if I was in charge. So who's going to be the leader? I think Gunless can be a good leader. We saw that with him in Seattle this year. They're listening. He was obviously the guy. He was clearly their IGL. He was making the calls. He was keeping everybody calm and keeping everybody on the same page. So he surely can be that leader and replace Havoc in that role. And he's just very versatile. He's one of the all-time greats in terms of just pure talent. And that is a good tool to have, especially entering a new game where you're not really sure how it's going to play. You can be confident that Gunless can at least be a pretty good player no matter what the title is, because he has been that pretty much since he started in Infinite Warfare. He's either been like elite and the best of the best, or at least he was still pretty good. So no matter what the game looks like, Gunless will probably be decent. I think him and Skies make a very good AR duo. They have a lot of high upside. They can definitely slay with the best of them. You need slaying ARs and you need smart ARs, and they would have both of that in this situation with Skies and Gunless. And then again, high risk, high reward SMG duo. You might as well take a chance. Like, you didn't really do anything this year. You got 8th, so you got to move up. And I think Neptune and Yeast give you the chance to do that. They could struggle at first because they're young. They have not played together, but I think as the season went on, they would get better and they would drag this team to a top 5-ish team. So I'd love to see it. If I was in charge, this is what I would do if I was, running the Florida Mutineers. That is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, definitely leave a like down below and leave a comment as well with what you would do if you were in charge of the Florida Mutineers as we approach the 2022 season. And also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Armchair GM videos like this one from me in the future. I do appreciate all of that so very much. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a good day today, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.